I am the big tank.
On the battlefield of life, nothing's harder than a tank. Yeah, have you ever met a man, hearts full of love, bigger than a tank?
Big tank.
He served in a few wars. He's a veteran that stands for a cause. For the best interviews and news, just keep it glued to the tank.
I am the tank. Big
Big
tank.
Tank Talk.
Tank.
Big Tank Talk.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Big Tank Talk. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing artist MikeNizzyArt. Mike, welcome to Big Tank Talk.
Thanks for having me, Big Tank. It's awesome to be here with you today.
It's an honor to have you here. I'm a big fan of your work. So let me jump right in and ask you, what's your artistic education and background?
Well, you can say that I've been doing artwork since I was a kid. I was heavily involved all throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, took every possible art class that I could think of. And I had some great teachers throughout those years. And then after I graduated high school, I joined the military, and art kind of started tapering off for a little while. And I was just kind of doing artwork on a hit or miss basis, when I got a chance to. But largely, I had a 20 to 25 year break between high school and when I got back into it just a few years ago. But other than high school and things like that, I'm pretty much self-taught as an artist.
Well, that's impressive because I've seen a lot of your work, and I think you're very good at what you do.
Thank you.
Can you walk me through your typical creative process from conception to completion?
This has kind of changed, and it's always an ongoing process with me. I was doing fine artwork a few years ago, and that was a lot more planned out, a lot more detailed. It was taking my own photography of my own references and really having a solid plan from beginning to end, because in the fine art world, there's not a whole lot of room for error. So everything really has to be planned out. Lately, this last year or so, I've been doing just a lot more kind of freedom work, I guess you could say. Is I just kind of think up something in my head, maybe do a quick sketch on Procreate, and then I just kind of go for it. So I kind of like both aspects of it. I like doing the fine art stuff that's really detailed and planned out, but I also like to just kind of paint stuff off the top of my head and kind of see what comes out.
That's fascinating to me. I have no artistic ability at all. I write a little, I guess. I'm a writer, I guess. So let me ask you, have you developed any rituals or habits while you work on your art?
I wouldn't really say that I have any rituals or habits. Obviously, I like to have my stuff prepared, but I don't like to take my artwork too seriously. I don't like to think of it as too ritualistic. I kind of just like to go with the flow. And the most important thing for me is to enjoy what I'm doing. If I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to create that kind of artwork. And I try not to let other things get in the way of that process.
That's certainly fair. Do you have a preferred medium that you use?
I absolutely love using acrylic paints right now. That's what I'm using. I've always wanted to try oils. I've been really leery of it just because of the chemical smells that could really be aggravating to my personal health. So acrylics is what I'm using right now. I started out in colored pencils. I did that for a couple years, which is a very, very tedious medium to use. Very difficult, probably one of the most difficult. I've dabbled in a couple other mediums, but right now I'm absolutely loving acrylic for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons, it's got a really quick drying time. So I can paint live for an hour and a half in a night and create an entire painting and not have to wait for any kind of dry time.
That's cool. How do you decide if a piece of artwork is finished?
This is probably one of the toughest issues to deal with, and probably not just with me, but with a lot of artists. It's just kind of that gut gut feeling. You know, if I'm doing fine artwork, I know when it's finished because it's more of a process oriented type of artwork than what I'm doing right now. But it's really just kind of looking at it. And when you get that gut feeling that if I keep adding more to it right now, there's a chance that I'm going to overdo it. And that's when a lot of my artwork, I think, ends up being not as great as it could be, is because I just want to add more and I end up overworking it. So there's a real fine line between calling something quits and adding those final details.
That's definitely understandable. So let me ask you, how has your creative process evolved over the years? I know you kind of touched on it, but let me just ask that straight out.
Yeah, it's like I said, the creative process with the fine artwork, there's not really a whole lot of creativity because, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm just reproducing kind of a photograph that I've taken and putting it down on a piece of paper. So although there can be a lot of creative process with your actual composition with fine art, the real creative process, I think, has changed in this last year and a half with me or so. And this really kind of started, I went through a couple months of dry spell to where I had been doing art for a few years. I didn't really know where I wanted to go with it. I wasn't really feeling the artwork. I wasn't motivated. So I spent a couple months not really creating artwork. And I had gone through some of my old pieces of artwork that I didn't really like, or pieces of artwork that I didn't finish. And I went live one night and I just started throwing paint on them with no plan, no regard for what I was doing. And that's kind of what prompted the artwork that I'm doing today. Is I really enjoyed that freedom to just do what I want, what just came to my mind, not be so restricted to having plans, and just go with it. So my creative process, I guess, in the last couple of years has gone from being really rigid and structured to being a lot more free with my art.
Well, that's cool. And I'm sure your artwork reflects that change as well.
Yeah, it's my style of artwork has completely changed in the last couple of years. And I can honestly say some of the artwork that I'm putting out right now isn't as popular, or it may not be as great to some people as what I was putting out a few years ago, just because it's a completely different style. But that's just something that's really subjective to a lot of people. For me, it's something that I'm working on. I try to get better every day with my artwork, with my creativity, with what I'm doing. And so art is just, it's always an ongoing process, especially creativity.
Definitely understand that. Now, I asked you before what your preferred medium was. Do you have favorite tools that you use when you're doing your artwork?
I'm one of those guys that I use the cheapest tools that I can find for some reason. I know there's a lot of really expensive paintbrushes out there and a lot of really expensive art supplies that you can buy. But some of my favorite tools, some of my favorite paintbrushes are things that I buy in like a pack of 50 that I can get for $10, you know, just, I like to use just really simple, no name kind of supplies. I do have this one tool that I use. It's called a mahl stick, MAHL stick. And it's just really something that keeps my hand balanced while I'm painting, and it keeps my hand out of the paint work. But that's probably the best tool that I use today with my artwork.
I believe I know what you're talking about because I've seen you paint live a few times.
Right.
So let me ask you this: what part of the creative process do you find most satisfying?
Probably when the finished product gets done and I can sit back and look at it and say, you know, wow, this was something that I had in my mind, but I didn't know if I was actually fully able to put it on a canvas. And when you spend time working with artwork, and you know, we always, as artists, we always have those doubts in the back of our mind whether we can put our vision onto a canvas. And the most satisfying part is when you finish it up and you can tell yourself, wow, this is exactly what I was going for. And it's not always easy to do because I think creativity is a lot easier to have in your mind than it is to put down on a piece of paper. So when you can accomplish that, it's really gratifying.
Oh, I'm sure. And I've interviewed several people that are creative. Some are musically creative, some are creative with the written word. But one thing you all have in common is you tend to be hypercritical of your own work. And you can be putting out some really phenomenal stuff, and you'd be the first to doubt it. But at the end of the day, that you're still putting out really quality work.
I appreciate that, and that's so true. It's a common saying, we are our own worst critics, and I do it all the time. You know, every painting that I do, every drawing that I do, I look back and I say, well, this could be a little bit better, this could be a little bit better. But those really aren't the things that I dwell on anymore. They're things that I keep in the back of my mind for the next time I'm doing a painting, and it's just a continuous improvement, just like any skill set that anybody has. You know, we're never perfect with what we do, but we can always learn to do it better the next time. And that doesn't mean that what we have just accomplished isn't great.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Do you collaborate with other artists? And if so, what does that process look like?
So I've done quite a few collaborations with a bunch of artists, and it's extremely satisfying because you get to mix many different styles into one piece of artwork, which you can't just do on your own. You know, I can't do a piece of artwork and have one style this way and one style another way and try to emulate other people's styles. But when you're doing a collaboration piece, you really get to see some brilliant artwork. So there's a lot of artists that I'm friends with that I've done collabs with. I've done a painting, and maybe it's a painting that I'm just not 100% happy with, something that I just don't want to sell, and I'll sell it, or I'll send it to an artist friend, and for them to touch it up or for them to add their spin on it or do something fun. And we actually have a canvas that's kind of going around the country right now that I believe it's already been to 5 or 6 different artists, and it's on my way to me right now for me to put the finishing touches on it. But that's going to be an awesome collaborative piece because none of us really had a plan with it. None of us really know what the other one's going to do. So, you know, one person will paint a portion of it, they'll send it to somebody else, and they'll add something to it, send it to something else, and then by the time it gets to me and I finish it up, it's just one awesome piece of artwork that's been made by, you know, a half a dozen people. So those are really fun projects to do. I love doing them, and I look forward to doing more of them in the future.
I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product of that because I believe I know several, if not all, the artists involved.
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
Let me ask you, how has technology impacted your artistic process?
I mean, technology is advancing so quickly. Let's just put like AI to the side because that's a whole different topic. But for me personally, with technology, I just started using Procreate in the last year. And for those that know, it's basically like an Illustrator app. And so sometimes when I'm coming up with my plans to do my artwork, back before I got Procreate, I was hand drawing everything. And then I got Procreate. Now when I come up with my plans, I do it actually on my iPad, and I can come up with a complete artistic design before I even put any paint to canvas, and I can see how it works out. And I absolutely love it. There's a little bit of a learning curve to try to learn how to use it. But once I got the hang of it, I carry my iPad with me everywhere right now. And I just, if I have an idea, I can jot it down real quickly on my iPad, and I can add colors and I can change things quickly without having to use an eraser or start over. So that has been huge for me in the last year and a half, learning how to use Procreate. So I'm super excited about that. And I encourage anybody out there that wants to learn how to do any kind of digital artwork to check it out. It's a super easy, super inexpensive app.
I can see where it would be a benefit to somebody who has a creative mind anyway.
Yeah, that's
it would be, to me, it would also provide a little time savings too, because it's got to be quicker to do it digitally than when you draw it out.
exactly. So much time savings. I mean, I could probably knock it down, you know, at least half the time, if not more.
That's fascinating to me. let me ask you, what strategies do you use to maintain productivity and consistency in your work?
Um, I'm not sure if it's so much a strategy to maintain consistency. If we're talking about how much work I'm outputting, I do artwork every single day. Sometimes I'll take Sundays off from doing artwork, but I like to stay consistent. I like to have my same live every single night. I like to get into a rhythm and a routine with when I'm doing my artwork, because then it almost feels like if I'm not really having a good day, I have that obligation to create some artwork. And I know that sounds like it may not be a good thing, but having that timeliness and that schedule gives me that little extra push to create artwork. And then after the artwork is created, I can look back and say, wow, I'm really glad that I did this. So just kind of keeping a consistent schedule for me is what keeps me on track with that.
That absolutely makes sense to me. Do you commission artwork? Do people commission work from you?
They do. I don't do a whole lot of commissions, just because I do a lot of series work. I like to get a lot of my followers and a lot of my friends involved with the artwork that I'm creating. I like to do series artwork. I just finished up a series called Fantasy World, and it was 40 different creators that they gave me ideas and on what their fantasies were, and then I painted those. I'm doing a zombie series right now, and so I'm creating a bunch of zombies based off of creators and where they want to be a zombie at. It's called Destinations of the Undead. So these are real fun. They're not specific commissions, but they are, in a sense that 40, 50 people per book that I do are giving me input, and they're actually paying for the paintings after I finish them up. So they're being, I'm being commissioned to paint for them, but there's a bigger picture with all of it.
That makes sense. It would be pretty cool to be involved in something like that. It sounds
Yeah.
pretty fascinating. How does your life philosophy influence your artistic impression?
How does my life philosophy,
Yes, sir.
as far as what?
I just, I guess the best way to put it, your outlook in life. How does that affect what you do, what you produce when you produce art?
Basically, this is also something that's changed over the years. While I was in the military for 21 years, everything was structured and rigid and disciplined, and I do have that, I guess, in the back of my mind as a sense. But I've learned as an artist that it's okay to let a lot of those things go. And that has been kind of a breath of fresh air with me, to be able to create something on my own with no guidance or no direction from anybody else. It's really a feeling of freedom, and I try to live my life that way as well, by not being influenced by too many other people, by thinking freely for myself and creating what I want to create, despite what other people may think. And that can be a really tough thing to do. But I enjoy taking that aspect of my life and applying it to my artwork.
Absolutely. I would imagine. Now, I didn't know you were in the military. If you don't mind me asking, what branch did you serve in?
I was in the Air Force for 21 years. My wife and I we both retired. So
Thank you. Thank you and your wife for your service.
well, thank you as well, Big Tank.
Oh, anytime. One last question. What do you feel is your most profound piece of artwork, and why?
I actually have a series. It's not one piece of artwork, but it's 5 pieces of artwork that are part of an entire series, and it's called the Never Stop series. And it's actually the first pieces of artwork that were original piece of artwork that I created on my own. And this started back in the end of 2019. I had been retired for a few years, and I really didn't know what I was going to be doing with my life. And I was struggling with alcohol addiction, and I was going through some depression issues. And my wife had asked me, do you want to color with me? Because adult coloring was really big at that time. And I was like, coloring? Why would I want to color? You know? And she's like, well, I got this Game of Thrones coloring book. And I was like, okay, that sounds manly enough for me. I guess I can color in a Game of Thrones coloring book. So I colored my very first page, and it was like something sparked. I was instantly hooked back into the art world, and I colored probably nonstop, 10 to 12 hours a day for an entire year. And I got to the point to where I said, I wonder if I could really be an artist. You know, let me do some research and see what I have to do. And so I went out around a couple roads down from me. There were these old broken down buses, and I took some pictures of them, and I created this series called the Never Stop series. And it's basically just a colored pencil series of different ways to view life. You know, they're called broken, tired, empty, alone, and never stop. So it's kind of a visual representation of the struggles that people face in their life, obstacles that they don't believe that they can overcome, but they truly can. So I did this series with all of these broken down buses, and it was really my first pieces of original artwork that I had created. I had started entering them into exhibitions and competitions, and they really kind of blew up really quickly in the art world. Next thing I know, they're in like 5 different magazines, and they're winning international awards and things like that. So it was almost a sign to me that I took this big step to create my own original artwork, and it was going to be the tipping point on where I was going to go from there. So that series is really what kind of set me off to continue on in the art world. And every now and then when I get down, when I'm like, oh, I'm not creating what I really want to create, or I'm just not feeling it, I can look at that series and I can say, this is what started it all. And it's named Never Stop for a reason. So it's always something that I can look back on and be proud of and appreciate.
That's pretty impressive to me. And that's the last of the questions I have to ask you. Well, pointed questions. I do want to ask you, for somebody that wants a Mike Nizzy original piece of art, how do they do that? Do you have a website, or
Yeah,
how do they reach you about that?
I don't have a website. I don't have a store. And I did have all those things earlier this year. I had a big store set up, and I had all kinds of ways to purchase my artwork and prints, and but it got to the point to where managing the business portion of the art world was so stressful for me that it was getting in the way of me actually creating art. So I shut down my stores, and I said, I'm just going to focus on creating good art, and what happens with it happens with it. But surely if anybody's interested in any of my artwork, it's easy to get a hold of me on Facebook or Clapper. Send me a message, let me know you're interested. And, you know, I'm willing to sell pretty much everything that I have, and I have prints of pretty much everything that I have as well.
That's awesome. And for the benefit of the people watching this interview, if you want a piece of Mike Nizzy original art and you can't reach him, reach out to me and I'll reach out to him for you.
Yeah, just look up MikeNizzyArt on Facebook or on Clapper. Facebook's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'm real easy to get a hold of. I'll respond if you send me a message. I'm real easy to talk to. So if anybody's looking for some cool original artwork, that's where to go.
All right. At this point, Mike, I'm offering you, as I do everyone I interview, you know, going forward, an opportunity to do a shout out, whether it's for your artwork, for somebody in your life. The shout out's entirely at your discretion, but you're having that opportunity now.
Okay. I know by the time that this airs, this is going to be long over, but I would like to give a shout out to International Women's Day. I didn't mention this when I was telling you about my art history, but my art teacher, Mrs. Sybil Siana, she was my art teacher from 7th grade all the way up until 12th grade. So she was at my middle school. she was my middle school art teacher. And then as soon as I went to high school, she transferred schools to go to the same high school I did. So I was fortunate enough to have Miss Sienna as my art teacher for 6 or 7 years. And she's truly a pioneer in the art world. And I don't know how much she understood how much she means to me, or how much she meant to me when I was going through some tough times in middle school and high school. But she's the one that really drove me to have passion of art in my heart. So I just figured I would recognize an amazing woman, and thank you to all the other women out there that are making impacts on people's lives.
That's awesome. I would also like to mention, and it's going to long be over by the time this posts, but I want to mention that you did a picture, that you painted a picture for our mutual friend Jarita, who is a breast cancer survivor. She had the surgery to remove the cancer, and she is completely cancer free. And then you're selling prints of the painting you made to help support the expenses she's incurred. And I want to shout you out for that.
I appreciate that. And if I could add to that, this is what I love about social media community and the art community, is this wasn't even a planned event that had taken place. I was socially chatting, saying, hey, what should I paint tonight? And the topic of Drita came up, and we just kind of went with it. I said, well, let's paint a sign for Drita. And I didn't even have on any plans on selling prints or anything like that. This was just a painting that I was doing for her to show my support. And then people in the comments started wanting to buy prints. And I was like, yeah, I don't mind selling prints. This is great. I didn't think of it. But if I sell them, we're just going to give all the profits to Drita or whatever foundation that she chooses fit. So the support has been absolutely overwhelming for Drita, and I appreciate everybody that has bought a print. Initially, I didn't think we were going to be able to sell 25 prints, but we sold 25 prints in 2 days, which is a great amount of prints for, a simple piece of artwork. So, the community is fantastic. Drita is an amazing creator and an amazing person, and I was happy to do that for her.
I have to tell you, Mike, you're a pretty amazing person yourself, and I'm honored to call you a friend.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you taking the time to allow me to interview you. There are a couple more artists that I'm sure you know on Clapper that I'm going to reach out and offer an interview to, and hopefully they will accept as well. Because I've interviewed 2 artists now, 2 painters, and I love digging into the background and what gets you to the point where you're at now. You're a fascinating person. You're an amazing friend, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Big Tank. That means a lot to me, and I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate the exposure that you're giving to other creators. And keep doing what you're doing. You're an awesome individual, and I appreciate you as well.
Now, my friends, if you feel like there was questions I should have asked Mike Nizzy and didn't, by all means, put it in the comments. Either he or I or both of us will see it, and I'm sure you'll get your answer.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, please like this interview and subscribe, because I have more great interviews coming. Mike, it's been a pleasure having you here today, brother, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.